The sedan turned into the driveway just before dusk, its engine ticking as it fell silent. Linda Reeves stepped out, her bones heavy from 6 months of hospital chairs and motel beds. She turned toward the backyard and stopped. The fence was wrong. It jutted through her garden like a wound.
That can't be right. That's 6 feet inside my property.
She walked mechanically toward the place where her husband's fig tree had stood, now just a stump.
23 years he tended this tree, and someone killed it while I was gone. They tore out the rose arbor too. Grandma's roses, all of it, gone. Whoever did this didn't just steal land. They stole a piece of my life.
Linda rose slowly, her gaze locked on the fresh lumber that had erased 40 years of roots and seasons. Her eyes didn't blink, her hands curled into fists. The quiet fury of a woman with nothing left to lose. Her neighbor, Robert Keller, was already walking over from his yard, hands in his pockets, a rehearsed smile on his face.
"Hope you don't mind. Old fence was crooked. Surveyor friend of mine said the real line was here. Saved us both a headache, really. You were gone so long, I figured I'd handle it."
Linda said nothing. Her gaze passed through him like he was a stranger.
6 months at my sister's bedside, and he was out here with a shovel and a tape measure.
She turned away and walked toward her house without a single word. Inside her kitchen, the familiar scent of coffee and old cookbooks settled around her like armor.
He doesn't know who he's dealing with. He doesn't know my grandfather.
She opened the album to a photograph from 1962, her grandfather Charles, in his surveyor's hat, holding a steel stake.
You hammered those stakes yourself, Grandpa. Every lot, every line, and he thinks I won't remember.
She closed the album and let the weight of memory settle in her chest.
He surveyed every lot in this subdivision. His iron stakes are still out there. I watched him drive his truck to this very dirt when I was a girl. He always said a good line never lies.
The grief she'd been carrying for her sister Ellen and her husband Dave pressed against her ribs.
They left me this house, this land, and Robert Keller thinks he can just take it. No, not without a fight.
She pulled her phone and searched the county records office hours.
Charles Henderson, 1962. Original survey plat. It has to be there.
Tomorrow morning she'd be waiting at the records department with one name on her lips. Her hand rested on the photograph one last time before she turned out the kitchen light. Thursday morning, 8:02 a.m. Linda stood on the granite steps of the county records building as the doors swung open.
I need the 1962 original survey plat for Subdivision 4, Foxwood Estates. It was filed by Charles Henderson.
The clerk's fingers paused on the keyboard before she disappeared into the back shelving. She returned with a large rolled tube, the paper yellowed and fragile at the edges. The top corner read, "Plat of Foxwood Estates, June 12, 1962, surveyed and mapped by Charles F. Henderson, registered land surveyor number 7841.
There it is. His hand drew every one of these lot lines. 62 years, and it's still here.
The plat showed the exact placement of the iron stakes he had hammered into the earth decades ago.
I need a certified copy. I'll pay the fee right now.
She watched the clerk press the raised seal onto a duplicate, the embossed county logo gripping the paper. Linda rolled the certified plat carefully, the weight of the paper in her hands heavier than a deed. An hour later, gravel crunched under her tires as she pulled up to the old Henderson farm, the shed still standing at the edge of the overgrown field.
Grandpa kept everything in here. His tools, his maps, his whole life in this shed.
She pushed open the warped door and stepped into the dim space, dust motes swirling in the thin light from a single window. She rummaged through old wooden crates, her hands brushing against rusted levels and survey stakes.
He taught me to read a compass right here, 30 years ago. Now I need his words.
Beneath a stack of old plat books, her fingers closed on a leather-bound field notebook, the cover worn smooth. She opened it carefully. The pages were filled with her grandfather's neat cursive from the summer of 1962. The notebook read, Lot 19, north corner. Iron stake set 12 inches below grade. Witness, oak tree, 14.3 feet southeast.
He noted every stake, every offset. Robert didn't just move a fence, he tried to erase Charles Henderson.
She pressed the notebook to her chest, its pages a bridge to the man who had once measured every inch of her childhood. As she lowered the notebook, a small photograph slipped from the back pages and fluttered to the floor.
Oh, Grandpa, it's you, standing right at the stake with your sign.
The image showed Charles Henderson in his surveyor's vest, pointing at a wooden sign, True Corner, 1962.
This is it. Proof he was here. Proof the line is exactly where I remember.
Tears spilled down her cheeks, but her hands steadied the photograph like a relic.
I never thought I'd need you like this, Grandpa. But you left me a weapon.
She dried her eyes on her sleeve and studied the background, the oak tree, the slope of the land.
I need a modern surveyor now, someone who can put this evidence on official paper.
She closed the shed door behind her and walked back to the car, the notebook and photograph pressed tightly together. By the time she reached the driver's seat, she was dialing Mark Dawson, a licensed surveyor she'd found in the county directory. Linda made the call from her kitchen, the plat and notebook spread before her.
Mr. Dawson? My name is Linda Reeves. I need a property line survey. I have the original 1962 plat and field notes.
Early the next morning, Mark Dawson's pickup rumbled to the curb, a tripod and GPS pole strapped in the bed. He set up his total station near the invasive fence, its lens aimed at the sky like a quiet challenge. From his living room window, Robert peered through the blinds, phone pressed to his ear. He came outside, arms crossed, and strode toward the property line where Linda stood.
What's this about, Linda? You're not trying to make trouble over a little fence line, are you?
Just verifying the original boundaries. My grandfather's notes from '62 are pretty detailed. Should match.
Robert's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He turned and retreated to his porch, watching from a distance. Mark ignored the interruption, his instruments capturing coordinates from the old iron stake locations Linda had flagged. Mark swept a metal detector over the flagged spots. A sharp tone confirmed it. The original iron stake lay exactly where Charles had driven it.
Unbelievable. It's still here after all these years. The coordinates match your plat down to the inch.
He extended a measuring tape to the new fence, exactly 6 feet, 2 inches inside the true line.
This survey will hold up anywhere. Your grandfather's work was meticulous.
6 feet. That's all. And yet it took everything from me. Now I'm taking it back.
Mark drafted the official report on the hood of his truck, the stamp coming down with a crisp, final sound.
Thank you, Mark. This means more than you know.
Glad to help. Not often I get to validate a survey from 1962. Good luck with your neighbor.
Linda folded the report into her flannel pocket. She turned toward Robert's darkening house, no hesitation left.
He thought a widow wouldn't fight. He was wrong.
Linda walked across the lawn, the survey report in one hand, the old photograph in the other.
Linda, I told you the other day, it's all settled. What do you want now?
I have the certified survey, Robert. Your fence is 6 feet onto my property. This is the 1962 plat. My grandfather drew it.
That old paper doesn't mean anything. My surveyor, Brian Hartman, already verified the correct line. He's a professional.
Then you won't mind giving me his license number. I'll look him up.
That's none of your business. Brian's been doing this for years. You're just causing trouble because you weren't here.
If he's licensed, it'll be in the state database. I'll find out soon enough.
Robert's face reddened. He snatched at the door. This conversation is over. Remove your surveyor from my lawn. The door slammed. Linda stood alone on the step for a moment, her fingers tightening around the photo of her grandfather.
You just gave me my next move, Robert. Let's see who Brian really is.
Linda sat at her desk and opened the State Licensing Board website, her fingers steady on the keyboard.
Let's see about you, Brian Hartman.
She entered the name into the search bar and clicked. The screen refreshed with a single line. No records found for Brian Hartman, surveyor.
Nothing. Not a single record. Could be a database error, but I need certainty.
She dialed the board's verification line and pressed the phone to her ear.
I need to verify a surveyor's license. The name is Brian Hartman. Can you confirm if he's registered?
The licensing official's voice came back immediate. No license issued under that name, ma'am. Not in this state.
He's not licensed. Robert's survey is a complete fraud.
She printed the search results and added the page to a growing folder of evidence: plat, notebook, photo, survey, and now this. Linda scheduled a consultation with Eleanor Vance, a property attorney whose name she'd gotten from the county bar referral. Eleanor, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, opened the folder Linda pushed across the conference table.
You have the original plat, field notes, a corroborating photograph, and a modern survey. And the neighbor's surveyor is unlicensed?
Yes. Brian Hartman doesn't appear in the state database. I confirmed by phone.
Then we file for ejectment and treble damages. The court can order him to move the fence and pay for the destroyed plantings.
I want him to know he can't just take what isn't his. My grandfather's work will stand.
Eleanor drafted the complaint on her laptop, printing it out for Linda's review. The complaint read, ejectment and treble damages for unlawful trespass, destruction of crops, and use of fraudulent survey. Linda signed the complaint, her pen pressing hard into the paper.
We'll file this at the courthouse first thing tomorrow. Expect Robert to be served within 48 hours. Are you ready for that?
2 days later, a process server in a plain jacket knocked on Robert's door and handed over a thick envelope.
What is this? She's suing me? Over a few feet of dirt?
He stormed across the lawn, the papers crumpled in his fist, his face a thundercloud.
Robert, I won't discuss this without lawyers present. You need to go back to your property.
You think you can drag me to court with some ancient family map? This is harassment. I'll countersue you for everything you've got.
Try it. But the plat, the notebook, the photograph, and the licensed surveyor all say the same thing. You're in the wrong.
Your grandfather is dead. This is about now, not 1962. You'll regret this, Linda.
Linda turned her back and walked into her house, the screen door clicking shut with a quiet finality.
This isn't over, do you hear me? You'll pay for this.
She didn't answer. Through the window, she watched him stalk back to his house, still clutching the crumpled lawsuit. The court set a hearing date for early October. 3 weeks later, Eleanor called with unexpected news.
Robert's attorney is requesting a settlement conference. He'll move the fence back 3 feet and pay half the damages.
No. He annexed 6 feet, destroyed my husband's tree, my grandmother's roses. I won't bargain with a trespasser.
Good. Our case is strong. We'll present the plat, the notebook, the photo, and Mark's survey. The court will see the truth.
They spent the afternoon preparing exhibits, enlarging the plat and the photograph of Charles at the stake.
I wish Dave could see this. He'd stand right there with that stubborn smile. For him, I can't settle.
Eleanor walked her through the direct examination questions, Linda's answers steady despite the tremor in her hands.
My sister Ellen spent her last months fighting cancer. This is nothing compared to that.
By evening, the preparation was done. Linda sat alone in her kitchen, the evidence folder beside a cold cup of coffee. She didn't sleep well, but when the sun rose over the courthouse, her resolve had hardened into something unbreakable. The courtroom was still, the air heavy with old wood and expectation. Linda sat at the plaintiff's table, Eleanor beside her. The bailiff called her name. Linda walked to the stand, her hand trembling as she laid it on the Bible.
I came home from my sister's bedside and found my garden gone. His new fence had taken 6 feet of my property.
She unrolled the 1962 plat and held it up, her grandfather's signature visible from the gallery.
Charles Henderson was a licensed surveyor. He hammered the iron stakes himself. This photograph shows him at the true corner.
The judge leaned forward, studying the documents. The courtroom hushed. On cross-examination, Robert's attorney asked if she'd been present when the fence was built.
I was at Sloan Kettering, holding my sister's hand while she fought for her life. So no, I wasn't here to watch him bulldoze my arbor.
The defense attorney sat down. No further questions. Linda's composure had held. She stepped down and walked back to her seat, the weight of the truth now resting squarely on the defense. Eleanor called Mark Dawson to the stand. He walked up with the quiet assurance of a man who'd measured the truth.
I located 3 original iron stakes exactly where the plat placed them. Still below grade, undisturbed. GPS and total station matched Charles Henderson's field notes to within a centimeter. It's exact.
The defense attorney stood, trying to imply that old instruments weren't reliable. Mark didn't waver.
A stake driven in 1962 doesn't migrate. The metal detector confirmed it, and the numbers line up.
The judge overruled the objection. Mark's testimony, crisp and unshakable, left no room for doubt. At the defense table, Robert's face drained of color. He leaned close, his whisper urgent and frantic. The court recessed. Robert's lawyer thumbed through papers, finding nothing to counter the survey. The witness chair for Brian Hartman stayed empty. The defense's supposed surveyor never materialized. When court resumed, the defense offered no more witnesses. Their entire case had crumbled. Eleanor rose, holding a single paper between 2 fingers like it was a loaded weapon.
Your Honor, we offer a certified affidavit from the State Board of Registration. Brian Hartman holds no surveyor license in this state.
The judge accepted the document and read it in silence, his frown deepening with each line. The affidavit read, "No license has ever been issued to any Brian Hartman for the practice of land surveying in this state." Robert's lawyer half rose, mouth opening, but the judge's glare froze him in place. The judge spoke without looking up. "This is a state agency certification. It speaks for itself." Robert's face went slack. The fraud was no longer an accusation. It was a documented fact on the court's table. Eleanor requested the court consider the unlicensed surveyor as proof of willful trespass for treble damages. The judge made a note. With no further evidence, the judge ordered closing arguments for the following day. The gavel fell with a crack. The room buzzed as people shifted, but Linda sat motionless. The truth was finally in plain sight for everyone. The next morning, Eleanor delivered closing arguments with calm precision, laying the evidence before the judge like bricks in a wall.
The defendant's trespass was deliberate, his survey fraudulent. We ask for ejectment and treble damages for the destroyed plantings.
Robert's lawyer's rebuttal was hollow, a last attempt that crumbled without a single credible witness. The judge retired to chambers for only 20 minutes, then returned to the bench with a single sheet of paper. The courtroom stilled. The judge read, "This court finds Robert Keller trespassed upon the property of Linda Reeves, relying on an unlicensed surveyor. The defendant shall remove the fence within 30 days and pay treble damages of $18,000 for the destroyed plantings." Linda exhaled a breath she'd held for 6 months. Her hand rose to cover her mouth, tears spilling. At the defense table, Robert sat stone-faced for a long moment, then stood abruptly and walked out without a word.
Justice doesn't always shine this clearly. Your grandfather's work made it undeniable.
Linda looked down at the photograph of Charles tucked into her file. She smiled, the first real smile in months. 3 weeks after the ruling, a work crew pulled up to Robert's curb, their flatbed loaded with tools. They walked toward the fence with crowbars and saws, and Linda knew what was about to happen.
That fence felt like a lie every time I looked at it. Now it's just firewood.
She stood at the kitchen window, coffee cooling in her hands, as the first plank splintered free. Robert watched from his porch, arms crossed, his face unreadable. He didn't look toward her house. Board by board, the fence that had stolen 6 feet of her life came down, revealing the raw earth beneath.
6 feet of land, 6 feet of grief, both returned to me today.
By late afternoon, the last post was uprooted. The true line lay open, waiting. The crew loaded the lumber and drove off. Robert turned and went inside without a sound. Linda opened her back door and stepped onto the soil, the sun warm on her face. The land was hers again. The next morning, workers returned with cedar posts and rolls of heavy wire. their auger biting into the soil. They set each post exactly on the line Charles Henderson had scribed 63 years ago. The new fence rose quickly, straight and sure, marking the true boundary without apology. Linda stood at the garden's edge, a flat of tomato seedlings beside her, their scent sharp and green.
I won't let this ground stay empty. It's time to plant again.
She knelt and pushed her fingers into the cool earth, tucking each tomato start into its new bed. Then she unwrapped a young fig sapling, its leaves trembling in the late afternoon light.
For Dave. He'd want this tree to shade our grandchildren someday.
She dug a hole for a climbing rose, the first of many that would rebuild the arbor, and pressed gravel around its roots. By dusk, the garden breathed again. The fence stood true, and the scar on the land had finally closed. A week later, Linda sat at the kitchen table with a stack of blank cards, writing invitations for a garden housewarming. She wrote one for Robert Keller, too, and slipped it into his mailbox without a note. Saturday afternoon, the yard filled with neighbors who carried casserole dishes and curiosity.
They came to see the garden, but they're staying because something here feels like home again.
Guests admired the new fence, the young fig tree, and the climbing roses already reaching for the arbor. Linda poured lemonade and laughed with old friends, the sound blending with the buzz of cicadas. But as dusk fell, her gaze drifted across the lawn to the house next door, its windows entirely dark. No light, no sound. The invitation she'd mailed sat untouched behind the glass of the front door.
I wanted him to come, not for peace, but for proof that he knows what he lost.
She turned back to the laughter, the garden aglow with string lights, and let the ache sit beside the joy. After the last guest drove away, Linda sat alone on the porch, a glass of wine catching the final amber light. The string lights still glowed, but the yard was quiet now, only crickets and the whisper of new leaves. She picked up the framed photograph from the side table, Charles at the stake, squinting into the sun.
You didn't know you'd still be protecting me 60 years later, did you, Grandpa?
She traced the edge of the frame, the glass cool under her thumb.
Thank you.
The words were barely a whisper, but they seemed to settle into the wood of the porch like a prayer answered. Above her, the first stars came out, and the new arbor caught the moonlight. The line was true. The land was hers, and somewhere a stake driven in 1962 still held its ground. Linda closed her eyes and breathed. Inside, the kitchen table held the 1962 plat and the leather notebook, open to the page with the fading coordinates. A small candle flickered beside them, its flame steady in the breezeless room. Some lines once drawn true can never be erased. Through the window, the garden stretched out under a field of stars, the new fence a dark silhouette against the moon. The fig saplings stood in silver light, the rose arbor already climbing toward the promise of spring. A stake, hammered into the earth 6 decades earlier, still held its ground. And a woman who had lost so much had found the boundary between grief and justice and planted a garden on it. The candle burned on, the flame unmoving. In the morning the garden would be waiting, but tonight the land rested in the hands of the woman who had earned it back. Screen fades to black.